Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Smriti Ahuja and today I'll cover specific contents which require proofreading in a manuscript. Please note, first 5 section heads were covered in last part 1 of the video and today's video will cover next 5 sections which require proofreading and editing before final submission for publication or to your research guide for review. Results are the most important section heads of your research paper because it reflects contribution to existing knowledge base. So it should be mentioned clearly. So please check for inclusions. What were your key findings? Is there something which your paper could not answer? And are there any findings which contradicts your hypothesis? For this, you can follow a sample structure starting from your key findings, reporting primary results, also acknowledging secondary results which are relevant, supporting the information with the use of figures and tables, and also mentioning results which contradict your hypothesis. Next, please check for the appropriate style for writing the result section. There are two kinds of ways in which you can mention your results. First one involves use of figures and tables which are supported by comments in the text form. For this, you should arrange your figures in a logical order which should support your initial aim or hypothesis and then associate the key findings with each of these figures. For such a way of writing, you can follow sentence structure which are given as examples. Figure 1 shows or the first residue reveals, also mentioning the figure you are referring to in brackets, or mentioning the appropriate table you are referring to, or like this, where the full form of figure is mentioned. Another form of writing your results section is to report your results in a text form. For this, you can follow sentence structure which are given as examples. Overall, the results show that, or the 3 key results are: the following are the emergent themes identified from the analysis. The next important point is to check for the apt use of tense form. Generally, past simple tense is used in a mixture of active and passive voice. For example, this statement represents past simple in active voice. Present simple is also used when interpreting the data that indicate a certain trend. Like this. Here, table 2 shows this represents present simple tense. Or here, this means also represent present simple tense because it is clearly indicating a trend. Next is to check for the tone of result section, which should be impersonal in nature. For example, check out this first statement. Here, V is denoting a personal tone of result section. However, this can be converted into an impersonal tone like this. Also, impersonal tone can be mentioned or highlighted with the help of use of passive form. For example, here the words were looked at represent passive voice. At all, if you have to mention we, or you are the sole author of your paper and you have conducted research by yourself, still you should not refer to yourself as I because it is an informal way of representing yourself. Rather, a formal way of denoting we is highlighted to show a formal style of writing. The next section of your research paper that requires proofreading is your discussion. It is a crucial section because it highlights the level of innovation of your research, or in other words, it justifies why you wrote the paper. So please check for following inclusions while proofreading. Clarify and clearly distinguish between your contribution to the study and that of the other author's contributions. Also convey the uniqueness of your contribution by interpreting your findings without repeating them. As a credible and responsible author, try to discuss the limitations of your findings. Also state the applications and implications of your research to the current or related field of studies. The next point is to check for the style of writing, whether we should follow active or passive form. For this, consider the original example. Here, it is not clearly indicated whether the suggestion was made by the current author or it was suggestion of any reference which is mentioned in the paper, because it is highlighted in passive voice, which does not reveal the author or the action the author has followed. So the reader will not be able to distinguish between your finding or the finding of any other people you have mentioned as reference. The improved tone is this. Here it is clearly indicating that we refers to the current author or current authors, and the findings have been developed by the current authors, because the use of active voice clearly distinguishes between your work and any other author's work that you have mentioned as a reference. The next point is to check for an appropriate format. Though there is no clear format for a structured discussion, or there is no clear grid or rigid template to follow the same, but a good length of discussion section is to have not more than 5 long paragraphs to maintain brevity and preciseness of your discussion section. Also, please check whether you have indicated the principal or key findings, strengths and weaknesses of your study in relation to other studies, possible explanation and implications for policymakers, so that conveys the meaning of your study, any unanswered questions or the future scope of research, and at last summarizing the main points for your readers. The next important section head that requires considerable efforts in proofreading is the conclusion. The conclusion section should be clear and have high impact message for readers. It should be concise and leave the readers with a good impression. If the structure in your English language is poor or it is not well edited in proofreading, there is a high chance that your paper may be rejected or may not be accepted for final publication, as it may have a negative impact on your credibility. So please make sure that your conclusion gives a brief revisit of the most important findings, a final word on the importance and significance of your findings, implications and impact of your findings with possible application areas to other related fields, limitations of your study are well incorporated, recommendations for future work for the authors and for the community as a whole, and also the recommendations for key policy makers in the field. The next point to check while proofreading is the element of non-repetitiveness. Why? Because the key skill in conclusion writing is not to repeat exactly the same phrases and information which you have already mentioned in your abstract and introduction. Rather, it should give clear emphasis on the findings, convey limitations, not even mentioned in the discussion, and covers additional aspects of recommendations for authors in the related fields or for community as a whole and for key policy makers. The next point is to check for apt use of tense form. Here, simple past and present perfect can be used. Please check the following example. Here, the tenses which are mentioned in simple past are used to convey what the authors did during their experiment or during their research, whereas present perfect is used, which is denoted by the words have described. It is used to show what they did during the writing process of the paper. The next important section that requires proofreading is the limitations. Please admit your limitations or limitations of your methods and approach that you have followed in your paper clearly and honestly. It is important for your scientific advancement of the topic in related community or in your research field. But make sure that it is not formulated in a negative light. Check out the original statement, for example. Here the words, the limitation or this will affect gives a wrong and negative impact of the limitation. But the same can be refined using proper English structure with including words like although or only, which lessens the negative impact of the limitation. So please check while proofreading that you have neutralized the negative impact of the limitations. Make sure that you do not use the word limitation excessively. Also, the words like unfortunately and regrettably can be omitted while proofreading. The linking word moreover only adds to the impact of the limitation, which can be removed while proofreading. Introducing and incorporating the words like although and only will lessen the impact of limitation or the negative impact of limitation in your paper. For example, in the previous sentence, including the words although, it tells the reader that though you are talking about something negative, but you have something positive to offer. And the word only lessens the level of seriousness of your shortcoming. The next important point for proofreading is the use of impersonal form, which is possible by incorporating passive voice form. Check out the example. Here, the sentence in passive voice gives an impersonal tone, or in other words, it does not directly implicate the author for any shortcoming in the approach or method. Instead, if the author would have written "we found," it would have directly implicated the author of the shortcoming or the limitation. So it can be neutralized in a more impersonal form by using the passive form like "it was found." You can use the words "it is assumed," "speculated," "reasonable to hypothesize," or simply "appears" or "seems," which use impersonal form in the English sentence structure rather than using the active form. Last but not the least, please make sure that your paper does not end with limitations, or it should end with something positive that will impact the reader's final impression. This can be done by talking about something positive like writing about the applications of your topic in related fields, suggesting some future scope of research, or even re-highlighting the important and crucial relevant points of your findings which have some benefits to offer. The last section for proofreading is your referencing. Normally the references section is also called reference list or cited works list, and it contains the full text details of in-text citations. In-text citations are the ones which are used in your manuscript or in the main text. It includes vital information as name of the author, year of publication, title of the paper, publisher details, or URL. So please make sure that your references are mentioned in the correct alphabetical order from A to Z. Next thing to check while proofreading is the consistency. Please make sure that you follow a consistent and recognized style guide among Harvard, APA, MLA, Chicago manual throughout the manuscript, or you can also follow simply the guideline given by your targeted journal. But if you stick to only one style guide, please do not change your style guide within the manuscript, because there can be differences in the format while mentioning capital letters for surnames, even placement of commas or punctuation for year of publication, single, double, or no speech marks around the title of publication, volume information labeling, and even page range references. So if such differences are noticed while you are switching from one to another, it may amount to imperfection. The next point is to cross-check every in-text citation with your final list of references, which is placed at the last of your thesis or manuscript. Normally there is a tendency that while we are finally drafting the manuscript, we tend to remove the irrelevant citations or studies, but we forget to remove them from our final reference list. So please make sure that every in-text citation matches and corresponds to every entry in the reference list, and that there are no extra sources mentioned in the last bibliography section or even in the main text citation. The last thing to review is to check for accuracy of cited material. Please make sure that all the definitions and quotations are backed by in-text references correctly. There should be no misspelling of the names because that may reflect your imperfection and it does not reflect professionalism on the part of the author. You can also mention page numbers where endnotes have to be specified. And please make sure that you are providing sufficient in-text citation for every quotation, every definition, or even if you have paraphrased the whole sentence or the interpretation, because the absence of mentioning in-text citation may lead to the charges of plagiarism. It is important to maintain a checklist, a handy checklist, which can review the status of your proofreading for all the sections from results, discussion, conclusion, limitations, referencing. And you can also mention the status of your proofreading for all the subsections which are mentioned from number 1 to 6. This will keep the track of your proofreading level and you will not miss any subheading which needs to be checked and edited for. I believe that you like the information in the video and you find it valuable. For more information or any assistance on proofreading services, you may contact me, Dr. Smriti Ahuja, at the mentioned email ID. For more future updates and valuable inputs, please subscribe to the channel Learning with Chandan. Please like, share and post your valuable feedback on our YouTube channel Learning with Chandan. Thank you.